Ladies and gentlemen, today we are diving into one of the darkest and most misunderstood plans in Japanese anime history, Eren Yeager's plan, and the terrifying truth behind the rumbling. This is not a story about a villain waking up one day and choosing destruction. This is the story of a boy who chased freedom so relentlessly that he reached a point where freedom could only exist if the world itself was crushed beneath his footsteps. Eren Yeager's vision of freedom was never small, and it was never peaceful. From the moment he looked up at the sky behind the walls, freedom meant more than survival, it meant the absolute right to exist without permission. In Japanese anime, freedom is often portrayed as breaking limits or surpassing fate, but for Eren, freedom was tied to something far more brutal: the removal of threats at any cost. This is why peace was never truly an option for him, even when it appeared to be within reach. As Eren grew and uncovered the truth of the world, his understanding of freedom evolved into something heavier and more dangerous. He learned that the walls were not protecting humanity, they were imprisoning it. Beyond those walls existed not just titans, but an entire world that feared, hated, and wanted his people wiped out. In Eren's eyes, this meant freedom was not a shared human right. It was a privilege decided by power. And those without power were destined to lose everything. What makes Eren different from many anime protagonists is that he does not believe coexistence is possible once hatred reaches a certain scale. Where other characters might search for compromise or diplomacy, Eren sees those paths as temporary delays of inevitable destruction. He understands that as long as the world exists as it does, his people will always be hunted, feared, and eventually exterminated. Peace, to Eren, is not fragile, it is fake. It only exists until fear resurfaces. This belief is rooted deeply in Eren's experiences. Every major loss in his life reinforces the same lesson: mercy does not protect the weak. Walls fall, treaties fail, promises break. In anime storytelling, repeated trauma often hardens a character's worldview, and for Eren, it solidifies a terrifying conclusion: freedom cannot coexist with enemies who deny your right to live. If the world refuses to accept your existence, then the world itself becomes the enemy. Eren's vision of freedom is also deeply personal. It is not about saving humanity as a whole, it is about protecting those he loves. Mikasa, Armin, and the people of the island represent his entire universe. If the rest of the world must burn to ensure their survival, then in Eren's mind, that price is justified. This is where his idea of freedom diverges sharply from morality. Freedom becomes selective. It belongs to us, not everyone. In Japanese anime, this selective morality is often portrayed as the seed of tragedy. Eren is fully aware that his idea of freedom will turn him into a monster. But unlike traditional villains, he does not deny this. He accepts it. Peace would require him to trust a world that has never shown mercy. Peace would require him to gamble the lives of his people on the hope that hatred might disappear. Eren refuses to take that risk. Another crucial aspect of Eren's mindset is his relationship with inevitability. Once he gains access to future memories, peace becomes even more impossible. He no longer sees multiple outcomes, he sees one unavoidable path. In anime logic, knowing the future often gives characters a chance to change it. For Eren, it removes the desire to try. If the future shows destruction, then destruction must be the cost of freedom. Eren's refusal of peace is not rooted in cruelty or madness, but in certainty. He believes that hesitation will only lead to annihilation. To him, choosing peace would be the ultimate betrayal, not of morality, but of responsibility. He believes someone must act, someone must carry the sin, and someone must protect the island by becoming the enemy of the world. This is why Eren's vision of freedom is so terrifying. It is logical, it is consistent, and it is completely incompatible with peace. In his mind, freedom cannot be negotiated, shared, or postponed. It must be secured absolutely, or it does not exist at all. The rumbling was not a sudden act of rage or a spontaneous decision, it was the final form of Eren Yeager's logic. In Japanese anime, world-ending events are often triggered by emotional collapse or loss of control, but Attack on Titan takes a far darker route. The rumbling is planned, accepted, and executed with chilling clarity. For Eren, it is not an act of hatred, but an act of prevention. He does not unleash destruction because he wants the world to suffer, he does it because he believes suffering is already guaranteed if he does nothing. At its core, the rumbling is Eren's answer to an impossible equation. The world beyond the island views his people as devils, a threat that must eventually be erased. Diplomacy, alliances, and understanding are not real solutions in his eyes, they are delays. In anime storytelling, when a character reaches this level of clarity, their actions often become extreme. Eren concludes that as long as the outside world exists with its fear and hatred intact, true freedom for the island can never exist. The rumbling becomes his method of rewriting the rules entirely. What makes the rumbling uniquely horrifying is that it is not driven by ignorance. Eren fully understands the scale of destruction he is about to cause. He knows cities will vanish, cultures will disappear, and countless innocent lives will be lost. Unlike many anime antagonists who dehumanize their victims, Eren does not. He acknowledges their humanity, and still moves forward. This awareness strips the rumbling of any illusion of righteousness and transforms it into a burden Eren willingly carries. In Japanese anime, catastrophic power is often portrayed as a test of character. The question is not whether the character can wield it, but whether they should. Eren answers that question in the most disturbing way possible: someone must. He believes that history demands a villain strong enough to end the cycle of hatred permanently. If that villain must be him, then he accepts the role without hesitation. The rumbling is not his escape from responsibility, it is his embrace of it. Another crucial element of the rumbling is its psychological isolation. Once Eren commits to this path, there is no room for discussion or persuasion. He distances himself from his friends, not because they disagree with him, but because he knows they would try to stop him. In anime narratives, isolation often marks the final descent of a character, and Eren's solitude is absolute. He cuts emotional ties to prevent hesitation. Love becomes a liability he cannot afford. The rumbling also represents Eren's rejection of the world's moral framework. The outside world judges his people as monsters based on history and fear. Eren responds by becoming the monster they already believe him to be. This is not irony, it is strategy. By embodying their worst nightmare, he removes ambiguity. There is no longer a debate about who is dangerous. He becomes the clear enemy, forcing the world into a single, unified response. From an anime perspective, this is a brutal inversion of the hero's journey. Instead of saving the world, Eren chooses to terrify it into silence. Instead of uniting humanity, he divides it one final time. The rumbling is not meant to inspire hope, it is meant to end resistance. It is a demonstration of absolute power designed to make future retaliation impossible. Eren's decision is also shaped by his understanding of time. Having seen the future, the rumbling feels less like a choice and more like a memory being fulfilled. In Japanese anime, fate is often something to be challenged, but Eren treats it as a responsibility. If this future exists, then it exists because he chose it, and because he must choose it again. The rumbling is not Eren's rebellion against the world. It is his final attempt to protect it in the only way he believes is real. By destroying the outside world, he believes he is creating a future where his people can finally live without fear, even if that future is built on unimaginable ruin. At the heart of Eren Yeager's plan lies a truth that makes the rumbling far more disturbing than a simple act of mass destruction. Eren is fully aware of what he is doing, and he chooses it anyway. This third phase of his plan is where Attack on Titan abandons any remaining illusion of heroic intent and steps fully into psychological anime tragedy. Eren does not lose control, he does not snap, and he does not act out of blind hatred. Instead, he moves forward with calm certainty, which is far more terrifying than rage. In Japanese anime storytelling, this level of composure often signals a character who has already accepted their own damnation. Eren's awareness transforms the rumbling from a weapon into a burden. He knows the screams that will echo, the lives that will vanish, and the innocent people who will never understand why they were crushed beneath his decision. Unlike traditional anime villains who justify destruction by denying the humanity of others, Eren never does that. He recognizes that the people outside the island are just like him, trapped by fear, history, and systems they did not choose. This recognition does not stop him. Instead, it deepens the tragedy. The rumbling becomes an act committed with empathy still intact, and that empathy makes it heavier, not lighter. This stage of Eren's plan reveals a chilling philosophical shift. Freedom, once defined by choice and possibility, becomes defined by outcome alone. If his people survive, then the method becomes irrelevant. This logic places Eren outside the moral framework of both heroes and villains in Japanese anime. He is not trying to be right, he is trying to be final. The rumbling is designed to end the conversation forever, to remove the future threat by erasing the present one. This is not justice, It is closure through annihilation. Anime often explores the idea of characters carrying unbearable responsibility, but Eren's burden is unique in its scale. He does not share it. He does not ask for understanding. He does not seek forgiveness. He deliberately isolates himself because isolation is the only way he can move forward without hesitation. His silence becomes his armor. Every emotional connection he severs is a step closer to completing the plan. In this sense, Eren is not hardened by hatred, but by resolve. He believes doubt would be more dangerous than cruelty. Eren's role as the world's enemy is not accidental, it is intentional. He understands that by becoming the ultimate monster, he creates a clear narrative for history. There will be no confusion about who to blame. His people will not be seen as a lingering threat, but as survivors of the greatest terror the world has ever known. In Japanese anime, characters sometimes take on the role of the villain to protect others, but Attack on Titan strips this trope of its romanticism. There is no nobility in Eren's choice, only necessity as he defines it. This phase also reveals how deeply Eren rejects the idea of shared responsibility. He does not believe the world can change together. Cooperation, understanding, and reform feel like fantasies to him, luxuries for a world that has not already decided his people's fate. The rumbling becomes his way of forcing the world into stillness. No more wars, no more cycles, no more inherited hatred. Just silence, and in that silence, he hopes freedom will finally exist for someone, even if not for himself. The tragedy of this stage is that Eren knows exactly what he is sacrificing. He sacrifices his name, his future, and any chance of being remembered with love. In Japanese anime, memory and legacy are powerful themes, and Eren chooses to be remembered as a curse rather than a hero. This is not because he underestimates his actions, but because he understands them completely. He accepts that the world will curse him, and he believes that curse is the final price of freedom. Eren Yeager's plan reveals the rumbling is something far more complex than destruction. It is a deliberate descent into monstrosity, chosen with open eyes, driven not by madness, but by a belief that someone must end the world so another can finally live without fear. Eren Yeager's plan is where Attack on Titan delivers its most brutal and unforgettable message. Even when destruction is chosen for a reason, it does not become less horrifying. This stage is not about strategy or ideology anymore, it is about consequence. The rumbling is no longer a looming threat, it is reality in motion. Entire nations fall beneath Eren's decision, and the world is forced to face what happens when one person believes they must carry the future alone. In Japanese anime storytelling, this is the ultimate point of no return, where a character's ideals fully manifest and the cost can no longer be avoided. What makes this phase especially devastating is that Eren does not celebrate his power. The anime refuses to frame the rumbling as a victorious climax. There is no triumphant music, no heroic pacing, no sense of accomplishment. Instead, the destruction is slow, heavy, and suffocating. The earth shakes, the sky darkens, and silence fills the spaces where life once existed. This deliberate visual language strips away any illusion of glory and forces the audience to confront the reality of mass annihilation. Power, in this final stage, feels more like a curse than a triumph. Eren's emotional state in this phase is defined by acceptance rather than passion. He has already mourned the future before it arrives. His expression is calm, almost hollow, as if he has placed his humanity somewhere beyond reach so that he can continue moving forward. In many Japanese anime narratives, characters struggle against guilt or doubt at the final moment, but Eren does not. Doubt would mean stopping, and stopping would mean accepting a future where his people are erased. To him, that future is more unbearable than becoming a monster. This belief locks him into motion, even as the world collapses around him. The relationships that once grounded Eren now stand as the final resistance against him. Friends who once shared his dream of freedom are forced to confront the reality of what that dream has become. These confrontations are not driven by hatred, but by grief. Japanese anime often portrays friendship as an unbreakable force that saves the day, but Attack on Titan deliberately subverts this idea. Friendship does not save Eren. Love does not stop the rumbling. Instead, these bonds only deepen the tragedy, because they prove that Eren was never alone, and yet chose to act alone anyway. This stage also reveals the ultimate failure of Eren's vision of freedom. By trying to erase the world's hatred through overwhelming force, he becomes the final source of that hatred. The cycle he wanted to end does not disappear, it simply converges on him. The world unites not in peace, but in opposition. Eren becomes the symbol of everything humanity fears, and in doing so, he achieves his goal in the most twisted way possible. His people may gain time, but the world gains a new reason to remember violence. In anime terms, this is the cruel irony at the heart of his plan. Visually, Eren's isolation reaches its peak. He stands above the world, godlike in scale, yet utterly alone in spirit. The anime emphasizes this loneliness through vast empty landscapes, minimal dialogue, and prolonged silence. These choices reinforce the idea that absolute power leads not to freedom, but to separation. Eren has placed himself beyond human connection, beyond forgiveness, and beyond return. This is not the ascension of a hero, it is the exile of a man who has chosen to become history's greatest nightmare. Eren Yeager's plan forces the audience to confront an uncomfortable question that lies at the heart of many Japanese anime tragedies: can a world built on fear ever be saved by fear? Attack on Titan does not offer a comforting answer. Instead, it shows that even when destruction is chosen with intention and sacrifice, it leaves behind scars that no victory can erase. Eren moves forward until there is nothing left to move toward, carrying the weight of the world's hatred on his shoulders. Eren was right or wrong. It is about what his choice reveals about the world that created him. A world so broken that it convinced a boy seeking freedom that becoming a monster was the only path left. In the end, Eren Yeager's plan forces us to look beyond the spectacle of destruction and into the uncomfortable truth at the heart of Attack on Titan. His journey is not the story of a villain who lost his way, nor of a hero who failed to save the world. It is the story of a boy who was taught, again and again, that freedom could only be earned through violence. Every wall he faced, every enemy he fought, and every truth he uncovered pushed him closer to a single, terrifying belief, that if the world could not change, then it must be broken. Eren did not become a monster because he enjoyed destruction. He became one because he believed sacrifice was unavoidable. His tragedy lies in the fact that he understood the pain he would cause and still chose to move forward. In doing so, Attack on Titan challenges the audience to question the nature of freedom itself. Is freedom the absence of enemies, or the courage to end the cycle of hatred? Is peace something that can be forced through fear, or something that must be built through understanding? Eren's story suggests that when freedom is pursued without empathy, it turns into another form of imprisonment. What makes Eren Yeager unforgettable in Japanese anime history is not his power, but his certainty. He represents the danger of absolute belief, the moment when ideals stop listening to humanity. Through him, the anime delivers its darkest lesson, that the world does not create monsters through evil alone, but through pain left unanswered and hatred passed down as truth. Eren carried the weight of that world on his shoulders until it crushed both him and everything around him. And as the dust settles on the path he chose, we are left with a haunting realization: Eren Yeager did not destroy the world because he hated it, but because he loved freedom so much that he lost the humanity needed to protect it, proving that the greatest tragedy of all is when the dream of freedom becomes the reason it can never exist.